Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well out there, and it's great to be with you again. For this next video, we're going all the way back to 1982, when a certain game came along for the Atari 2600 and knocked everyone's socks off with its creativity. Yes, Yars' Revenge here would be seen as one of the best games on the entire platform, and more impressively, would become one of the best-selling original games on the system as well. It's now over 38 years old and still talked about to this very day. Can something like this still be fun to play after all these years? Strap in, and we'll see just how well Yars' Revenge for the Atari 2600 holds up today. Released in May of 1982 for the Atari 2600, Yars' Revenge is a multi-directional shooter where you play as a Yar, a mutated housefly, on a mission to destroy the Quotile, an attacking alien race. The project was conceived and developed by Howard Scott Warshaw. While originally meant to be a port of the arcade game Star Castle, Warshaw advised his boss that the game wouldn't translate well into the Atari format, and used similar concepts from it to make another game instead. Here's what we did get. Playing as a Yar, your objective is to destroy the enemy Quotile in front of you. In order to do this, you have to break through its shield either by shooting at it or eating it up close, get within range of the Quotile, activate a special cannon called the Zorlon cannon from the back, and fire a precise shot to defeat it. In order to prevent you from accomplishing this goal, the Quotile fires a destroyer missile, i.e. the little squiggly thing coming at you, forcing you to move around while going after the shield. The Quotile is also capable of turning into a swirl and lunging out to attack the player. It's possible to destroy the Quotile while in this swirling form, but it takes a lot more work to aim and shoot properly. On top of all of this, it's possible to be hit by your own Zorlon cannon shot, making the player have to move out of the way pretty quickly to avoid losing a life. Luckily, you are given plenty of moving room with a screen that will warp you from the top to the bottom, or vice versa when you fly up or down past the screen. The game also has one other element that changes things up, and has caused a large bit of discussion among gamers and developers to this very day. The strangely colored bar in the middle of the screen, called the neutral zone, will actually protect you from the destroyer missiles, but in turn will also prevent you from firing, or using the Zorlon cannon at the same time, hence the neutral aspect of it. Even more interesting? It's made up of actual game code. In an interview with Digital Press, Warshaw confirmed that the neutral zone is actually programming code positioned vertically with a technique called counter-scrolling to give it the color-changing animation and continuous text scrolling that we're looking at here. That's one heck of a visual trick. Throughout each stage, the destroyer missiles, swirl attacks, and even your own Zorlon cannon shots all increase in speed, until the player eventually loses all 4 of their lives and sees their high score. The enemy shield also has a slight change after each stage, flipping between a semicircle design and a box with scrolling bits of shield to attack. Unfortunately, there are only 2 types of shields that you will see throughout the game, but what it lacks in enemy variety is more than made up for by the hectic nature of its gameplay. You'll be paying far more attention to how close each projectile is coming at you than the lack of shield types. The game also has 7 different variations, which you can select from the menu screen before starting. The game is automatically set to 2, which is the normal version of the game, while 1 is actually an easier mode with everything slowed down. Some of these variations create some key differences to the main gameplay. Variation 4, for example, allows the Zorlon cannon to bounce back off the enemy shield and potentially destroy you. But the real cream of the crop is Variation 6, also known as Ultimate Yars. This mode has a striking amount of differences to the main game, as you now have to collect a set number of what the game calls Trons in order to summon the Zorlon cannon instead of having it readily available once the enemy shield is down. In order to get these Trons, the player has to either eat a cell of the shield, which gives 1 Tron, touch the Quotile for 2 Trons, or catch a Zorlon cannon shot after it's been bounced back off the enemy shield for 4 Trons. I've never been able to do that last one. Perhaps the most nerve-wracking part about this mode is that the number of Trons you collect is never actually displayed on screen, leaving you to guess if you have enough to create another Zorlon cannon shot in time. While the game does go on forever, like I said before, there is a hidden Easter egg that can cause it to end immediately. It's interesting for sure, but it takes a bit of fancy maneuvering to unlock. It requires you to have your Zorlon cannon shot ready, wait for the enemy Quotile to turn into a swirl and lunge at you, and fire the cannon shot during its attack. If you time it just right, you'll notice a blank vertical line appear in the place where the swirl was destroyed that Yar will actually appear behind when flying toward it. The instruction manual calls it the Ghost of Yar and advises players to stay away from it. which basically means go toward it. If the swirl manages to be destroyed mid-attack by the Zorlon cannon, and the Yar appears in the lower third of the screen with the line over its back, you will reach a secret screen, where the game shows a set of initials, HSWWSH. What does it mean? Why, it's the initials of the game's programmer, Howard Scott Warshaw. But what are the other 3 letters? Well, according to Warshaw, this was meant to give us a hint about reading the other names in the game backwards, and in doing so, helps determine that Yars' Revenge itself was named after the CEO of Atari at the time, Ray Kassar. Yar was simply Ray spelled backwards, and the last name of Kassar was referenced in the game's setting, the Razak system. You may have noticed that my gameplay footage is also off. Sometimes you can see the neutral zone and destroyer missile, and sometimes you can see the enemy's shield, but never both. I was confused about why my capture card had trouble recording this at first, but thinking about the hardware limitations of the time, it began to make a little more sense to me. In order for all of these objects and animations to appear on the screen at once on a system like Atari, it would likely require some of them to blink on and off throughout the game so that too much couldn't be happening on screen at any time. This is merely an educated guess that I'm making though, as I don't know any of this for sure, nor have I seen any evidence to the contrary yet. With that said, here is some footage from my Atari Vault collection on Steam, which showcases the shield, destroyer missile, and neutral zone all in the same shot. This is closer to what the game will look like to you, minus the frame that's filling the rest of the screen here. I'm not sure what the developers did to emulate the game this way, but I am infinitely grateful. So now we get to the nitty-gritty of it all. Does this game still hold up as well as it did back in the 80s? In my opinion, yes, it absolutely does. Even though you do essentially play the same thing again and again with the variation modes, I found this title to be a lot more compelling to go back to. Between the use of the Zorlon cannon, having to move constantly to avoid the destroyer missiles and swirl attacks, and the advantages and disadvantages of the neutral zone, you're left with a surprisingly balanced experience. There's also something oddly satisfying about that full-screen explosion every time you land a hit and go to the next stage. My stance on this game may surprise some people, as I typically lean more towards story-driven titles or games with some kind of progression system that doesn't consist of looking at the same things. But if anything, that's just testament to the excellent design choices that Warshaw made here. Had any of these gameplay elements been changed around, I have a feeling this game might not have hit quite the same way. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that. And if story is more your bag, consider the fact that old copies of the game also came with a comic book, not only detailing the origins of the Yars and their fight with the Quotile, but provided some pretty vivid imagery that helps you visualize everything going on in the game even more. Maybe it's the way everything seems to run so smoothly, the addictive nature of the gameplay, or just the fact that the game feels like one big fun boss battle that you get to repeat again and again, but I can't help but enjoy myself every time I come back to this title. The whole thing is expertly crafted, and you could tell that a lot of careful work and planning was put into it, despite the hardware limitations of the time. It's also pretty funny seeing how Warshaw could create such a big success for the platform, only to put out something with such infamy not long after. But that's another story for another day. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Have you played this game before yourself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're feeling really generous, please consider donating to my Patreon, where awesome people like Brandon, Thomas, Johan, Cielo, and Andrew all help to keep this channel going. Until next time.